What comes to mind when I tell you, I hope today ends up being a good day after all? I'll tell you what it means to me. Today, my city is in the middle of a polar vortex. If you factor in the wind chill outside, it's 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which means it's 18 below Celsius. It's very cold. I'm a Caribbean girl. No matter how long I've been gone from Venezuela, which is where I was born and raised, I still don't like the cold. So to me, a good day means a warm, sunny day. But that's going to be very different than what a group of skiers may hope for when they hope for a good day. They want a cold day. Otherwise, the good snow may melt. For example, take a farmer who's been experiencing a drought. When he's hoping for a good day, he's hoping for a rainy day. And that's going to be very different from what a family is hoping for when they're headed out to the beach. So as you can see, context is everything for language. Culturally shared values provide that context which a language develops and then creates all these different meanings depending on where you're standing. So typically when we think of language, we think of sounds, we think of letters, we think of words, we think of sentences that we're putting together to communicate. But language is so much more than that. It's an expression of who we are as individuals and who we are collectively in a society. So that culture is going to provide that environment in which a language develops. You could also look at it from the other perspective. If you want to learn about a culture, you're going to have a much harder time if you don't have an insight into the language because they are so deeply connected. So what does that mean for us? For those of us that are raising global citizens? Well, most experiences that we create and we make with our children early on can have a great impact on who they become later on in life and what they're proud of. And we ultimately want them to embrace and be part of their heritage and who they are as individuals. Now, I touch on individuals because you may not necessarily be teaching your child only your heritage languages. You may be teaching your child a language that you just happen to learn later in life, through college or just through life. But by your children being bilingual and multilingual, they're going to have a different identity than many others around them. And we want them to be proud of that. We want them to embrace this great gift that you're giving them right now. So what I want to do is I want to give you 3 tips on how you can teach your children to have an appreciation for culture. So number 1 is, of course, to speak the language to your child. We want them to be active participants of the language. And we do that by creating exposure and giving them rich vocabulary input in the language. And then, of course, by creating a need to use the language. You put these 2 things in place, and your child, again, is an active participant and a speaker of the language. They're going to pick up on those subtleties of culture that you can only really get an insight on if you speak that language. All right, number 2 is we want to incorporate cultural traditions into our everyday lives. So look, for example, at national holidays. Those are great ways to infuse culture, food, books, dancing, all those types of things. Make sure you're involving your child and they can experience them from really early on. Oftentimes when we're raising multilingual children, we are desperate for new ideas and fun ways to infuse language into our lives. And really, when you look at those cultural traditions and activities, you're going to find a really great nexus. And chances are your children are going to really enjoy them. And then tip number 3, that is to encourage your child to become a little cultural ambassador. And they can do that in many ways. Let's say, for example, that your child's already attending school, and you can really do this as early as daycare and nursery. Have your child bring a book into the classroom from the language that you're working with at home. Bonus points if you can get your hands on some authentic text versus something that's translated. Because chances are you can have a little more culture if that's the case. So have your child's teacher read the book. If your child's old enough, they can read the book and they can share that and an appreciation for the culture with the classroom. You could also prepare a meal for your children's friends. Have your child help you out and then have some friends come over and then talk about the meal and what it means for your culture. Or you could even teach your child's friends a dance. Teach your child first, have some children come over, and see how much your child enjoys those activities. So, again, there are 3 tips for today. Number 1 is to speak the language to your child. Number 2 is to incorporate cultural traditions. And then number 3 is to encourage your child to become a cultural ambassador. I'll give you one last thought. Learning a language without culture is like cooking a recipe without all the fun spices from the region. It's like you're taking out the flavor out of the food that you're eating. And really, what fun is that? So I hope you have a good day today, whatever that means for you. And I hope that you have fun travels on your language journey. Bye bye.